What's up, guys? Paulie malignaggi for Paulie TV. Devin Haney versus George Kambosos 2 is over, and you know what? I don't think anybody's really that surprised. It was very, very difficult to see George Kambosos making any realistic adjustments in the fight. It just looked to me in the first fight where Haney was just too talented for him and just had too much ability at the end. Listen. Kambosos had success against Teofimo Lopez. I don't think it was 100% Teofimo Lopez mentally, physically. I don't know where that guy was. I mean, in comparison to the explosiveness he had showed in other fights, it was a different fighter. But nonetheless, Kambosos gets credit for the win regardless because he showed up on the night and he did what he did. But also, styles do make fights. Teofimo Lopez is a guy who will take it to you, looks to create knockouts, looks to create, just spectacular action. It's the kind of fighter that he is. While Devin Haney, he's not a boring fighter. I mean, he's a good fighter when you force him to fight, but he's not a guy who's going to come to you. He's going to force you to open him up, and force him. He's going to force you to force him to open up. And if you aren't capable of forcing him to open up, if you aren't capable of taking it to him in a way where you're going to confuse him, he's going to make you look like doo-doo, you know what I mean? And that's what he did to Kambosos in the first fight. It's a completely different style than Teofimo Lopez, but it's certainly a style that befuddled and then confused Kambosos completely. He had to take the fight to Haney, and he wasn't able to do anything remotely close to that in the first fight. So in the second fight, he's got to come up with something different. People, I heard comments were saying, "Oh, Kambosos is a counterpuncher, and that's why he didn't know how to get to Haney." Listen, bro, Kambosos is not a counterpuncher. He may do some counterpunching, but he's definitely not a counterpuncher. A counterpuncher sets traps to make you lead, and then when you lead, he sets you up with counters. A counterpuncher is somebody like Devin Haney, who has a great jab, and he dominates you with the jab and then sets little traps to make you lunge in, and then he'll hit you with some combinations or some sharp counters off of that. And then from off of those sharp counters, he'll get you completely questioning yourself. And when you're not getting off enough, he'll start to lead more and more and more. That's seriously what a complete counterpuncher does. A complete counterpuncher lets his jab and his counterpunching create situations where he can then lead. Kambosos is not a counterpuncher because Kambosos sets zero traps. He's always set zero traps. I've never really seen Kambosos set any kind of traps because that's what a counterpuncher does. When you're a counterpuncher and you know you're a counterpuncher, you create scenarios in the fight where you're able to draw offense out of your opponent so that you can then counterpunch him. And it also starts with having a really good, effective jab because that's the main scenario creator where guys will start to lunge in and get frustrated and lean, and then you can counterpunch them. So no, absolutely, I never agreed that George Kambosos is a counterpuncher. I don't know what kind of low IQ geniuses came up with that one, but he was never a counterpuncher. He's not a counterpuncher. He was never a counterpuncher. Every boxer does some counterpunching to an extent, but that doesn't mean they're a counterpunching style. Haney has a counterpunching style, which he then evolves it into an ability to lead when he starts to frustrate you and break you down off of his jab and counterpunching. So now that we got that out of the way, Kambosos came in trying to set these weird traps. He did. But again, you could tell it was out of his realm of real reality. It was something he'd never done. It was something that he was confused about doing himself. He came out, he was turning lefty and righty constantly and just looking to create confusing scenarios where Haney would engage or Haney wouldn't know what to do. Haney just sat back and stayed back on his lead jab and his lead right hand. That's all he did. And the reason why Kambosos wasn't able to confuse Haney in any way doing this is because Kambosos would turn lefty, turn righty, turn lefty, turn righty, but then when he'd have to lead, he would just rush in. So no matter what you're doing, right, lefty or righty, you're turning, you're changing, but you're not giving any looks that are going to force Haney to react. Haney can just sit back and wait on you and use his jab, sit back on the back foot, use that jab, use that lead right hand, and you're not doing anything. But then when you do want to attack, you're still getting all tight, you're giving it away, and you're lunging in. So again, lack of ability, lack of awareness, lack of an ability to create traps, to set traps for your supposed counterpunching ability, right? Or even a lack of an ability to create mistakes so that you can get in there for Haney smoothly and land some shots and land some combinations. None of that was done. I thought Haney did a better job of fighting in a more action style, but that also had to do with Kambosos doing everything he could to try to get Haney to work, to try to get Haney to open up. Even though he wasn't good enough, Kambosos did give more effort in this fight. He tried, and it allowed Haney to open up a little bit more because Haney's the kind of guy that if you want to see the best of him, you're gonna have to force him to feel threatened, and you're gonna have to force him to find the openings himself. And if you don't give him any openings, he'll just beat you with the jab all night. You know what I'm saying? And Kambosos, in giving a little more effort, gave Haney more openings, and Haney was able to beat up on him a little bit. Haney did get cut later in the fight. Kambosos, at times, Kambosos had some success here and there, but it was very mild. It was very few and far between, and ultimately he was never really able to figure it out. And that was it. I mean, to no one's surprise. I mean, nobody thought that Kambosos was gonna win this rematch. Kambosos took the high road in the rematch and stayed very quiet. He was hoping to throw off Devin Haney by being quiet and trying to surprise him, but there was really nothing in Kambosos' style that surprised Devin Haney or really was that major of an adjustment at the end of the day that really made a difference in the fight or even in the performance, and especially in the results. So Devin Haney moves on. George Kambosos is going to have to rebuild. He's had a good run, a nice run of about a year and change where he beat Lopez and he had 2 fights with Devin Haney. Probably was able to make some good money, take care of himself, which you always like to see. And I'm sure we'll see George Kambosos. Stylistically, there's some fun fights that he would match up well with. I'd like to personally see him against guys like Gervonta Davis and things like that. I wouldn't mind seeing that. Gervonta doesn't move as much, is not as shifty. He's explosive and he's dynamic in his own way, but in a different manner, in a different fashion than is Haney. And of course, as a former undisputed champion, it would be a scalp on the record of Gervonta Davis. And on top of that, people would compare the way Davis handles Kambosos to the way Haney handled Kambosos. Now, going forward, for Devin Haney, what happens? I've been saying this from the start. Listen, I mean, people hate and they get mad, and at the end, I'm always right. Guys, I'm always right. I know this business like the back of my hand. I'm always right, okay? The very rare times I'm wrong, I'll even tell you I'm wrong. You know what I'm saying? But when in terms of business decisions and the way things go, I don't always pick the right winner. Most of the time I do. I don't always pick the right winner, but at the end of the day, the business decisions outside the ring and the way promoters are going to look at things and view things from outside the ring, I pretty much have that part covered, and I can teach you guys. And you may not like the truth, but unfortunately, the truth doesn't depend on how you feel. That's a beta thing. The truth depends on actually reality and just the way things unfold and logic and common sense and more so than anything else, business sense. Now, Top Rank are the masters of this business. They are probably the elite of the elite, the Ivy League of the promotional entities in boxing. Granted, Matchroom and PBC are high level as well, but Top Rank for me is the elite. They know how to move their stars in, make them have a good reign, and when it's time to move their stars out, they are adept at getting their former stars, their aging stars, beaten by their new stars just at the right time to where their new star can now have a nice career and make a lot of money and be a superstar for themselves and for the company. So why do I say this? I say this because from the beginning I've been saying this. That Devin Haney, first of all, he was fortunate enough to where, the unfortunate situation of the Russia-Ukraine war allowed Haney to get the title shot at Kambosos and not Lomachenko. Otherwise, it would have been Lomachenko who would have took the undisputed title from Kambosos. So Haney was able to get the undisputed title. Again, for those of you that were telling me that the WBC champion was Haney before the fight, I'm sorry. WBC gives the okay for Lomachenko to fight against Lopez because they allow you to supersede your mandatory in order to make unification fights. That has always been the case, at least for the past decade and a half. So just because you don't feel, it makes you feel a certain type of way that the facts is a fact, doesn't mean your truth starts to become the actual truth. So just like I said, being that Lomachenko was going for a unification fight, WBC allowed Lomachenko to keep a WBC title, call himself a franchise champion, and go for the undisputed title against Lopez, a fight that he lost, and it allowed Lopez to become the undisputed champion. Of course, the WBC is never going to turn down an opportunity to make another sanctioning fee. So that's what they did with Haney. They created a secondary belt, call it the world title, just like the WBA created a super title and a regular title. Devin Haney basically won the regular title version of the WBC, and he was able to win that. It's basically a popcorn title, and he beat it against a popcorn opponent. He won it against a popcorn opponent. Then he beat an aging Linares, not the same Linares Lomachenko beat. Lomachenko beat him more closer to his prime Linares. Haney beat a past his prime Lawrence. But again, if you're not the real world champion, that's okay. You're a young fighter. You were looking good. You're coming up the ladder. And that's what Haney did. Haney also beat Jojo Diaz. Again, par for the course. No problems, no qualms about that. I just have a problem when people were starting to call him a world champion when the actual champion was Teofimo Lopez. Now, Haney won the undisputed title by beating Kambosos. Enough said about that. That's it. Haney's the undisputed champion. Everybody else is now playing pretend. The way Haney was playing pretend before, now anybody else with a belt in the weight class is playing pretend. Haney has all of the titles. We don't dispute this. Going forward, though, I said this would happen now. I said that Haney, Top Rank is a 3-fight deal with Haney. Haney is in a situation where he doesn't have to give sign long-term contracts. He was well off going into boxing, and for that reason, he never needed to sign long-term contracts with anybody. And so it allowed him to shift and maneuver, and that's a major advantage when you never have to align yourself long-term with anybody. Because what happened? He was in a matchroom deal with a verbal agreement, and he was able to ditch matchroom and go to Top Rank for the 3-fight deal in exchange for a shot at the lightweight title against Kambosos. That he would have never been allowed to do that. He would not have been able to do that had he been forced into a long-term contract with Matchroom. Having been well off going in, that helped him. Now that doesn't mean he's privileged, doesn't mean he's anything. That's all talk for you guys. But for me, it does make a big difference when business-wise you're able to not only have that savvy business mind, but also be in a financial position to make those savvy business moves, And he was able to ditch Matchroom and sign a 3-fight deal with Top Rank, which was going to be 2 fights, beating Kambosos and winning the rematch against Kambosos. The third fight was always going to determine whether Top Rank was going to hold the belts or not, because Top Rank is not in the business of letting you win belts against their guys and then letting you leave with the belts. So the third fight was always going to be against Lomachenko. And I said, from the start, I said, watch now, Haney's not going to want to fight Lomachenko. He's going to beat Kambosos because those are easy fights. And then he's going to vacate those titles and move up to 140 pounds. If he stays at 135, the plan for Top Rank was going to be for Lomachenko and Haney to fight, and Lomachenko to take the undisputed title from Haney, hold it for maybe a defense or two until Shakur Stevenson was ready to move in and become the next generation star, as he would take out the fading star that would be Lomachenko by that point. And that would have been a pay-per-view blockbuster. And that's how Top Rank, that's the art of the way Top Rank exits one superstar and creates the next superstar. And that's what would have happened. I feel like Haney is going to avoid Lomachenko. I've said that from the start. And now look what happened in the last week. Bob Arum had announced that the winners of the Haney fight and the winner of Lomachenko fight would fight each other. Guess what? Paulie's right, because Paulie knows his business like the back of his hand. No matter how you feel, guys, I'm sorry, your feelings don't matter, guys. That's not how it works here. Maybe in 2022, feelings matter because what they tell you on TV, but in reality, feelings don't matter, okay? It doesn't matter how you feel, okay? That was what was going to happen, and now that's what's going to happen once Lomachenko wins on October 29th. So what happens? Who's going to be right? I predicted from the start Haney would not fight Lomachenko. I would predict from the start he would rather choose to vacate the titles because it's better off business-wise for him to leave those titles, remain undefeated, and move up as a vacated, undisputed champion at lightweight and move up to 140 pounds rather than to lose all the belts and move up to 140 pounds with a loss on his record. So no matter what, he's going to duck Lomachenko, just as I said, because it's never convenient to fight Vasyl Lomachenko. Vasyl Lomachenko has fought them all. He continues to fight top guys. He looks and searches for the most difficult fights. He's not picking and choosing anybody. From the moment he turned pro, this guy was looking to fight top fights, and that's why he's the only male world champion to win world championships in 3 different weight classes before getting 10 professional fights. And that's a record that honestly will never be evened again by any male. Will never be broken by any male. It'll never even be evened again by any male, to tell you the truth. That's like a Joe DiMaggio 56-game hitting streak type of record. Having said that, what happens if Haney refuses to fight Lomachenko? I like to see Haney maybe against Teofimo Lopez. It's the last fight on the Top Rank contract, so now you would have to make a 140-pound fight, and Top Rank would probably make it against one of the 140-pounders, obviously. And if Haney re-signs with Top Rank and extends, maybe Top Rank will probably get him a more winnable fight. If Haney doesn't want to re-sign with Top Rank, and this will be the last fight on his contract, I think Top Rank will try to get him beat in his last fight with them, because that's how promoters do. Unfortunately, it's a scumbag business, and if you're not going to stay with them, they try to get you beat. And I think I would probably pick Lopez. The way Lopez came back looking, he seems to be back to his old self. I would probably pick Lopez to beat Haney, though it's a fight that I'd like to see, to be honest. It's a good fight. While I don't think Lomachenko and Haney's that close, I think Lomachenko dominates Haney. There's too many variables Lomachenko has in his arsenal. Yes, Haney's bigger, but there's just a lot of variations Lomachenko attacks you, and I just haven't seen enough variations and variables in Haney's style to deal with those kind of angle changes and those kind of combinations and stuff like that. And I believe that Haney knows that too, which is why I don't believe he's going to actually fight Lomachenko. So what happens to the lightweight titles if Haney moves up and they become vacated? I think maybe Lomachenko probably wins 1 or 2 of them. I think Shakur Stevenson wins 1 or 2 of them, as he's now a lightweight. And I think we'll still get that pay-per-view for the undisputed lightweight title eventually between Lomachenko and Shakur Shakur Stevenson, where they'll both come in as champions. And I think that's where Shakur will supplant Lomachenko and become the new superstar for the new generation with a pay-per-view win over Lomachenko. And Top Rank will do it at the right moment when Lomachenko is just aged enough to be fading out and Shakur is entering the prime of his prime. I mean, he's already super good, but Shakur, you want to make that fight right when Shakur is entering the prime of his prime, which I think is very close. So just like I gave you guys my prediction for the future, and it sort of started happening in the lightweight division. Those are my predictions, depending on if Haney vacates and moves up to 140 pounds, or if he stays at lightweight. But nonetheless, a dominant performance by Devin Haney over George Kambosos. Nothing that was surprising to anybody. Devin Haney, the undisputed lightweight champion. What's next? Leave your comments. I know there's going to be a lot of hate, guys. I'm sorry to tell you. Your feelings don't matter. It doesn't matter. Your feelings don't matter. He's going to duck Vasyl Lomachenko. That's the Paulie TV prediction. And like I said, I'm usually right with with the way this business moves. I can't predict the outside the ring, but my prediction, based on the way I'm reading him and based on the way I've always read him, he's going to duck Lomachenko. Leave your comments, like, comment, subscribe, and I'll talk to you later. And don't get in your feelings, guys, because what I'm saying is going to happen anyway, whether you like it or not.